Katie, thank you for being here. Yasina, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Yasenia. Thankful for the education you bring. What are your words of advice for those who are terrified and want to move to another country? But no, really, I appreciate the $1. My words of advice are, yeah, I mean, your fear is justified, and I understand your fear. But I think that we have to stick it out together and continue to fight and continue to move forward. And nobody's ever accomplished anything by sitting on the sidelines or running away. And it's not to say that if you want to move to another country, you can. I totally get it. I lived abroad and it's great. Living abroad is a really unique experience. You gain a lot from it. But I think we got to stay together and fight. So anyway, James, thanks for the $1. Hey, Harry, it's Jimbo. After this guy, please let me up. Well, if you're MAGA, we can definitely have a conversation if you'd like. Seth, thanks for the $1. He says, I won't actually read this guy's message out because I don't want to give him the attention, but this guy is not somebody who's going to come up and debate. And I think that when you do stuff like this, it's pretty cowardly. Chloe, thanks for the $5. Thanks for all that you do. Truly inspired by you. Chloe, you inspire me. I hope you know that. And by the way, the profile picture is really funny. I won't show the live, but I love the profile picture. All right. If you're MAGA, let me know in the chats. I'll bring you up and we can talk. Venmo, Cash App in the link in the bio if you want to support the live. Also, drop a follow if you haven't already. Double tap the screen. All my socials are in my link in my bio. Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, all that good stuff. You can find it there in the link in the bio. All right. If you're MAGA, let me know. Let me know if you're MAGA. We'll bring you up. You can tell me why. Look at this guy's username in the chat. His name is Donald Trump's uncle. Okay. All right, I don't know what that's all about, but sure. Hello?
Yo, what's good, Harry?
How old are you, bro?
Yo, I'm 19. I was born March 25th, 2005.
Golly, you came prepared. All right.
Yo, straight up, Harry, I voted for Kamala and Tim Walz. I'm a big fan, man. I just lied. I just wanted to come up and say what's good, man. I didn't expect it.
Yo, Nicholas, my man, I appreciate you, brother. And what state you vote in, by out of curiosity?
I'm from Ohio. Hope we can become a swing state again, but issue 1 didn't pass, so we're 3 steps backward. And we lost Sherrod Brown. Not a good year for Ohio.
That was a really tough one. Sherrod Brown, I wasn't expecting Kamala Harris to win on the presidential level, but Sherrod Brown really hurt.
I really thought Sherrod had it. I
did too, man. Well, I did too.
Thank you, man. We tried. Yeah. Good fight.
Yeah, you too, man. I appreciate the fight, man. Thanks, man. Yeah, Sherrod Brown. All right, let's bring up Jesse. He's just sitting in the box, so we'll bring him up. So sad over Sherrod Brown says, it's...
Harry, how you doing, buddy?
What's up, man? You vote for Trump?
I voted for RFK, but we had this conversation a few months ago.
Wait, you voted for RFK?
I did. I wrote him in.
What? Okay. I don't even know how to... Okay, all right.
So my question is why? There's not a single person championing food pollution, spearheading $11 billion class action lawsuits against the largest food conglomerate in the entire world. Yeah, I mean,
wait, hold on. But think about this for a second.
Sure.
Even if somebody spearheads a lawsuit and is a lawyer, why does that make them qualified to run our health agencies in the United States? If they themselves are not a doctor, they've never practiced medicine, they've never worked in medicine, they've never worked in a health agency, how are they all of a sudden going to be a chief expert on medicine and reforming the system?
He corralled a group of scientists to produce enough information and enough testimony to win a lawsuit against Monsanto. I mean, it's got to stand for something. And he's not just...
I don't think that stands for anything. I mean, we're talking about somebody that's going to be running like the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, all these different very important agencies. And he himself is, dabbled in conspiracies and is, again, not a doctor, not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination. He's a lawyer.
Define dabbled in conspiracy.
Well, his conversations on vaccines and medicine generally. His hinting of like vaccines cause autism in children, which has been debunked time and time again. His conspiracies of like, the media doing this, the media doing that, the Democrats doing this, the Democrats doing that. It's all very strange to me.
Could it possibly, the genuine question, could it possibly be that you are just, I guess, I don't want to say toeing the line because that sounds confrontational, but I guess I got to say it that way. Does it not seem like you just toe the line? Because when I hear these conspiracy theories, where they say, he's a conspiracy theorist, he has these wild, just wild stories about what he thinks is going on, but it's legitimately happening. How in the world does anybody think that in 1996, when they find out that by spraying Roundup on wheat, you can boost the yield and think that's okay, and then pass legislation that allows it to happen. And then 5 years later, you have a huge swath of people with leaky gut disease and celiac disease. Like, this is legitimately stuff that's happening.
And so then you want to put RFK Jr. in charge of this, who, again, has, questioned vaccines, which for some, not the disease you mentioned, but just diseases generally, has practically eradicated them in many instances. Why would we do that? And also, like, you're talking about, RFK Jr., spearheaded lawsuits against X group or Y group, whatever it might be. Trump, during his first term, deregulated fossil fuel industries and allowed them to pollute the air more with chemicals that have been linked to lung disease and brain disease. Why would you not vote for Kamala Harris, who wants to regulate companies to do that?
I mean, there's a whole host of reasons why I wouldn't vote for her. But then, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I was a lifelong Democrat, my man, but the things like, splicing a question in, was it 60 Minutes, where they spliced in an answer that they didn't like. They cut an answer, spliced another answer. Everything is just so rigid and conformed. It is kind of like,
dude.
60
Minutes has put out a statement on this, and they said that nothing was spliced, nothing was changed. It wasn't anything like that. They included in substance the entirety of her answer, but edited for time reasons. Right? Like a lot of interviews are. Donald Trump's interviews on Fox News are edited for time reasons because they don't have a 2-hour slot. They have like an hour slot or a 30-minute slot to do this interview and air this interview. So with Donald Trump, when he does these edited Fox News interviews, there's no objection. But Kamala Harris doing a nonpartisan outlet like 60 Minutes and having them edited for time reasons, then that's an objection for you?
Yeah. Let me ask you another question.
What the fuck? Wait, okay, but why the double standard?
I don't know of the times you're talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about just, my opinion on how the Democrats package, deliver, and just repeat, wash, rinse, repeat the entire process of, syndicated news media. It's just gross, man. This is actually a good forum that you have right here. I appreciate this because even though you and I differ on opinions, it's live. There's no, redos. There's no, I just hate it, man. I hate the way
Wait. Kamala Harris wanted to do another presidential debate with Donald Trump, which was live. There's no redos. There's no takebacks. And Donald Trump ran away.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know that. I mean, I'll take your word at. I'll take you for your word.
He put out a statement saying there will be no more presidential debates. He declared that he won. Now, any poll, I think logical person out there shows that people didn't think he won, or that on an individual level, people didn't think he won, and this is bipartisan. So he claimed he won, so he wouldn't have to do another debate, and he refused continually. So if you're like a big proponent of live public interaction and no takebacks and no undos, then why would you vote for Donald? I'm just so confused.
Joe Rogan was a harsh critic of Trump's for a while. Why didn't she go on and do Joe Rogan? He invited her on.
Yeah, there was some scheduling conflicts. Now, I think that Kamala Harris should have done Joe Rogan, but there were scheduling conflicts. Not every single thing in a campaign is going to work out. It was like the last 2 weeks of her campaign that is quite literally the most busy time for Kamala Harris or whoever the candidate is for both parties. Now,
Trump, to reach swing voters on the most popular podcast right now, bar none, you'd think that's a huge platform and an opportunity for her to capitalize.
You're speaking to choir. I think she should have done it. I think she should have done it. But that's not a reason to vote for Donald Trump. Because again, that's a favorable environment to Trump. When Joe Rogan released that podcast on Twitter, he endorsed Trump while doing it. So obviously that's a more favorable environment to Trump. But if you want a neutral environment, he should have done things like 60 Minutes, or he should have had another debate with Kamala Harris. He refused to do both of those things.
Let me ask you a question, and not to skip around on you, but this is pertaining to another topic that has been discussed, of recent with your viewers. Yeah. The tariffs, right? So you how did you feel during COVID? Like, did you have any family members that had a problem getting medication? Obviously, we've seen the shortage with semiconductors, things that were being held up in the supply chain by China intentionally. Do you think it's a good thing to have one country? Like, you go into a Walmart, I can guarantee you right now, and you can tell any of your viewers, you look on the back of 99% 99% of the products that are sold in Walmart, Target, anything, they are all manufactured in China. Do you not see a problem with having a single source supply chain?
No, I'm not against making more things in the United States. That's why, again, I think you should have voted for Kamala Harris and continuing the work that she did with the Biden administration. So I don't have a problem with that, but tariffs are not going to change that. At least the tariffs are not going to change it in a meaningful way rapidly.
They're not going to change them rapidly, but it opens up. So let's just say that, in the immediate future, it might get passed down to the consumer, right? And that's more than likely what's going to happen. But what else is going to happen is, guess what? You're going to open up other avenues. India, you're going to open up. And here's an argument me and my buddy have made time and time again. Why, when you have a country that is not aligned spiritually with our country, obviously we're a conglomerate of multiple cultures, but they're a half a world away. Why, when you have an entire continent of South America, right, that you can go down there, restore relations, build manufacturing plants closer in proximity to, our country, the largest retail market on the globe. Why is that not something that's taking place right now? Why are those, en routes not being made?
Why are companies not building factories there?
I'm just saying it's going to open the tariffs, in my opinion, are going to open up opportunities for other countries to come in and say, hey, listen, we can manufacture. We don't need to have everything manufactured in China. I think it's a mistake.
Well, let's find out what percentage of things are made in China? Because I think like the 99.
I was saying that based on, looking at the back of something in Walmart. You're going to find like your small utilities like silverware, spatulas, rugs, you name it, are mostly going to be made there. Now, you're starting to see a push for India, where India is starting to manufacture things. And, obviously it's the largest democracy in the world, and I'm okay with that. But I don't like the strong arming. Like, we abuse the SWIFT system. Are you familiar with the SWIFT system?
I'm actually not. I don't know what that is.
So the SWIFT system is the monetary policy that, if we decide that we disagree with some, country politically, we just turn off the money, right? That's what we did with,
Gotcha.
Russia, any country that we just don't like. But I think it's done with both Republicans and Democrats. And I think it's a mistake because the hegemony that is being implemented is really ticking people off. And that's why you're seeing a big push for BRICS. You're seeing these countries that are trying to unite, and every country right now, unanimously, without, with the exception of NATO, is aligning against us to try and come up with a currency.
So then, again, I don't know why you'd vote for RFK Jr. And like basically help Donald Trump. First of all, in 2018, 21% of all imports came from China. So it's not 99%. It's less than I thought it would have been. I as well. So I have no problem with reducing that. It's just a question of how much can you actually get that down from the manufacturing hub of the world. It's like that's probably a pretty difficult task, a task that is going to take some time, and it's certainly not going to be furthered by tariffs. But if your goal is like, oh, we need to like stop pushing countries into the arms of China, why would you vote for Donald Trump, who took us out of the TPP, pushed away China, and then after China negotiated a new trade deal with 14 different Asian countries, and now they have a trade deal with China, and they left us out of it?
You'd have to educate me on what you just, told me. I didn't know that, but I would refer back to, the 1980s. I was a kid and I didn't really experience it, but Japan had the same issue. They placed huge tariffs on Japan. Japan moved freaking car manufacturing companies here, and they flourished. You got Toyota's probably one of the, been in the top sellers for many years. I want to clarify something though before we move forward.
Yeah.
I never said I wasn't insinuating that 99% of the products were made in China. Yeah. I was saying when you go into a Walmart, I can guarantee if you pick up 100 products and look on the back of them, it's going to say made in China.
Gotcha. But isn't what you just said regarding like Japan having tariffs placed on them, like an argument in favor of against tariffs? You're saying that like China put tariffs on Japan, and so then Japan like moved their manufacturing overseas. Is that not like an argument against?
We put tariffs on Japan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying that China put tariffs
on Japan for manufacturing cars. We couldn't,
Yeah, but then you'd have to acknowledge that Japan's economy, whenever this took place, is vastly different than that of China. Like China is the rival toward the United States. Japan is not a rival toward the United States and hasn't been on a global stage. So if we decide to just put blanket tariffs on China, China is not just going to be like, well, God damn those Americans, you'll give up this time. No, they're going to put retaliatory tariffs and they're going to go find other solutions, just like they did when we pulled out of the TPP and Trump started a trade war with them.
You got to do something, man.
I agree. It's tough. No doubt. Foreign policy, trade, tough. They're tough subjects. But putting somebody like Trump in charge of it does nothing. It does nothing. We need to have like competent people in there, not people who are just loyal to Donald Trump. Kamala Harris would have brought that experience and brought people with her that are really good at their jobs. Whereas Donald Trump is appointing people like Matt Gaetz to be attorney general or a Fox News host to run the Department of Defense. It's so mind-boggling, dude. I can't even believe this is our country right now. It's so crazy. Sorry.
No, hey, listen, you're entitled, man. I guess another question I would have for you, and kind of piggybacking on what you just said, well, not piggybacking, but maybe segueing. How, in the spirit of compromise, how can the left not see the resounding voices of people that are like, hey, we want change. We don't want this. And I'm not saying progression is bad. I'm just saying at the rate and volume of progressive change that was taking place, I think people were like, no, I just don't want this. You and I, on our last topic, we had, the discussion about immigrants. And I have a soft spot for immigrants, but I also believe that you can't take on you can't take on more people if your raft is sinking. Like, maybe get a bigger boat, and then when the boat's better or things aren't in shit, you can go, okay, cool. Now we can maybe relax our policies. But we're drowning right now.
I don't think the United States is drowning. Are you saying just like
dollars in debt, Harry?
What was it?
We're $34 billion in debt, and every president, I don't care whether it's Kamala, Trump, Obama. I voted for Obama. They're printing money because they think that they can print their way out of this. They think that we can outgrow this, this situation. And it's a philosophy that a lot of economists will say, yes, you can, potentially outgrow something and outpace it. But what they're doing is manipulating the private markets by printing more money, buying up bonds, and it's just not going to end, man. The reason why most people overlook this, but the reason why we ended up in such a bad situation during COVID was because of the money that was printed and dumped into the economy that created inflation. And the only thing that staved it off was Powell coming in and saying, we're going to raise interest rates until people slow down their spending.
So I disagree. I don't think that was a main reason for inflation. You can make an argument that it is, but then if you make that argument, you would have to concede that Donald Trump bears more responsibility for that inflation, given the fact that his two stimulus packages combined were bigger in price than Joe Biden's stimulus package. And a lot of the investments he made with bigger policy are also over a 10-year period. So you see like, an over $1 trillion infrastructure bill. That's not $1 trillion right now. That's $1 trillion that's given out to different locations over the United States. And that's obviously not inflationary, but I digress. I don't think that the debt is that big of an issue. At least it's not right now. Because as you mentioned, like a lot of the debt is owed to the American people. And I think there is an argument to be made that we can outgrow it. And also, I don't know then why the solution is, if you're like, the debt's a big problem, but simultaneously in the same breath, you're saying, we have to like cramp down on immigration. There was just a Congressional Budget Office report in this year of 2024 that said that because of the unexpected surge in migration, the economy is going to be $7 trillion bigger over the next 10 years, and federal revenue will grow $1 trillion more because of the surge. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a problem at the border. It absolutely needs reform. But if you're like, we really need to tackle this debt, and if we're going to continue with the theory of we can outgrow it, then we need people to do those jobs. Then you would be embracing immigration and embracing policies like Kamala Harris, where she's saying let's incentivize legal immigration, make illegal immigration harder, as opposed to Donald Trump, who's saying, let's just deport 11 million people, of which 5% are made up of, or at least they make up 5% of the American workforce, and just see what happens.
I'm for legal immigration. Like I've got dozens and dozens of friends who have. I got a buddy of mine who's been here for 15 years. He still doesn't have papers. He's got 2 kids with an American girl, and she will not marry him. And I mean, he's a good friend of mine. And I get the plight. It's a struggle. And I would, in their situation, do the exact same thing, But the problem is you can't look at something and have a double standard and say it's not illegal when these guys are crossing and coming over here legally. If you're going the right channel, if you're going through the proper channels, absolutely.
Wait, did you just say that your friend is undocumented?
He's undocumented. He's been here for probably 20 years.
And you didn't vote. You know, Trump's going to try to deport him.
Yeah. He's not going to get deported, my friend. I don't know how that.
No. See, this is what I talk about when it comes to like the brutal reality that's going to hit a lot of people like a truck, unfortunately. And it's like I don't say this with happiness. This is not a gloating moment. Sure. But Trump is going to try to deport your friend. He's showing that he's serious about this by appointing people like Stephen Miller to be like a senior advisor in his administration, who has talked about things like denaturalizing people, right? If you've come here, become a citizen, Stephen Miller, who's now a senior advisor to Trump, has talked about taking away people's citizenship. And Trump has said every undocumented migrant, there's no price tag. He said there's no price tag. Every undocumented migrant, they're getting deported. So it's nice. It's a comforting thing to just say, oh, well, Trump's not going to go after them. Yes, he is. Your friend, there's a decent chance of your friend and your vote contributed to your friend getting deported.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I'm not a fan of Trump, buddy. I'm not. I'm just going to be honest with you. But I am a fan of RFK. I know you don't like him. I think that he a lot of the things that he's trying to do, obviously the most important aspect of what he's trying to do for me is the food pollution. The things that my kids, I've got 2 daughters, are going to struggle with and are struggling with right now. And there's no end in sight. No one's ringing the bell. Not one single Democrat has said, hey, let's fix this problem, because there's lobbyists that go in there and pay them and say, hey, let's just keep things the way that they are. Status quo is cool.
Trump also got donated to by a bunch of these food companies, by the way.
I don't doubt it. Listen, I believe him to be as compromised as anybody, but there's nobody doing it right now here. There's no one saying, let's stand up and do this other than RFK. And the fact that he's doing it in the face of making some of the proclamations that he is about BlackRock, Vanguard, Monsanto, and winning a freaking lawsuit against Monsanto. Like, I'm surprised they haven't killed this dude already.
What? That's a little too conspiratorial. But I get that. So I don't hate.
Serious? We just had. I was saying that. Please bear with me. We just had an attempt. I'm not defending this guy, but when we hear something and someone says it's too conspiratorial that they could try and kill someone, Trump
who's
was
they?
Whoever. I don't know who it was that tried to kill him. Maybe it was some just lone soldier, 19-year-old kid.
Yes.
Disillusioned.
That's what it was.
Right.
There's no but when you say, you have to be careful with your words, because when you say they, you're implying like a bigger conspiracy. This was an individual lunatic along with the other guy who tried. Two individual lunatics who acted on, according to the FBI, everything we know right now, on their own. There was no additional actors. They're just crazy. So, but like saying like, I'm surprised they haven't taken him out yet implies that there's like a they that are coming after RFK Jr., which I don't think
they is the people whose pocketbooks are going to get hit the most. BlackRock, Monsanto.
Are you insinuating that BlackRock would try to like?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Take the life of RFK Jr.
I don't know, but when you have,
why would BlackRock do that? Why the fuck would BlackRock do that? They're not food.
BlackRock manages $9 trillion, and when you have someone that's going to get into office that's going to reshape the landscape of monetary policy and how we do business with these companies, that's a pretty
BlackRock
big.
is going to be just fine. They manage other people's money and make investments based off of that. So if the United States, economy collapses because of Trump, they'll be, hopefully people pull out their money. Well, actually, let's not get into that. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But I digress. What I was going to say is, I understand your point regarding like health and things like that, and food and like what we put in our food. And I don't think it's wrong. I don't think that it's a bad faith position to be like, yeah, we have to clean up our food, and we should be more careful about what's in the food and what is regulated, what's not regulated. I have no problem. But why would RFK Jr. be the best person to do that? Wouldn't you agree that there are probably more qualified people out there who are experts in this field, who have studied this their entire lives, who could say, you know what, maybe we should make these reforms when it comes to cereal or soda or whatever it might be, that might be better than RFK Jr.?
There's a lot of what do you call them, documentaries. There's a lot of people who don't have a voice, who are just common folk like you and me, who are trying to do this. But when you can't get past that barrier, that huge barrier of lobbyists and lawmakers and people who really aren't going to make effective change, it becomes a little disheartening. I'm not kidding. Like, my daughter is a constant, topic of conversation between me and my ex-wife about, hey, what should we be feeding her? I buy all organic. I do, all of the regular things that we should be doing. But it's like, again, you mentioned there could be someone that's more qualified. Where are they? I mean, I would be all for it, but where are they? No one's stepping up and winning class action lawsuits. If they were, I'd probably be voting for them.
But winning the class action lawsuit is not a qualification to run health agencies in the United States. It's a qualification to be in the legal field, possibly, depending on the circumstances. But it doesn't mean that suddenly, because you won a case against a health agency, that lawyer can suddenly, or not health agency, I'm talking about a company, that lawyer can then suddenly transition into medicine. That makes no sense.
It moves the needle. It doesn't.
There's no needle that's going to be moved. What if you actually cared about reforming our food and making proper changes there, then you would have never voted for Trump, because while RFK Jr. yaps about it, he does it from a bad faith position, in my view. And there are far better people out there who Kamala Harris might have appointed to run the FDA, run the CDC, run the NIH, and of course the HHS, that could have done a better job on this. That's all. That's my point. I just think RFK Jr. is uniquely unqualified, and also, like a worm ate his brain. So I just think that's like kind of crazy. I don't know.
I'm laughing because there's a lot. I mean, you hear a lot of people say a lot of things, and I get a little. I'll point something out to you. I during Hillary Clinton's election, the Clinton Trump election, I started seeing things that I thought just weren't real, right? And I'm sure, are you familiar with the Cambridge Analytica thing? Yeah. And I think there was some truth to that, right? I think that was the kind of the start of weaponizing social media and information sharing to target voters. Would you agree?
Yeah, it was definitely a big part of that, for sure.
Do you think it is now just absolutely mushroomed into every facet of our political landscape?
Yes, and it's certainly being abused by, people that I would argue you enabled.
Both sides are doing it.
But I don't think both sides are doing it in the same way. I think that I don't even like the word manipulating, social media. I think that the Democrats engage in good faith arguments on social media and engage in social media that's a way that I think is moral. The Republicans do not. We've gotten so many reports of Elon Musk targeting certain voters with different messaging in certain states, but also messaging that was just false. Right? That's just not that on social media. That's not right.
Yeah, I guess the trouble, I think, in what I would say most common people, when I say common, let's just say common folk, or just regular, average Joes, struggle with reading between the lines. There's an allegiance, I call it the my team theory. You're not going to get an Eagles fan to sell out their team no matter what, and call pass interference. No, it wasn't. And it's the same politically. No one is going to turn against their team. That's the problem. And when you have these things, most people don't want to believe the things that you're saying. You can tell a Republican right now that Donald Trump did the most heinous thing, and they're going to go, I think it's, fake news. Well, and the same for Democrats, man.
But not true. That's just not true. I think Democrats are far more interested in a conversation, like a good faith, factual, intelligent conversation than Republicans are. Just to be clear, the Republicans are under the impression, many of them, that Trump was unfairly prosecuted, that the election 2020 wasn't fair, that the 2024 election was, quote, too big to rig, that we tried, we just were unsuccessful. All these crazy conspiracy theories. Whereas the Democrats are saying, can we just please elect somebody that's competent, that knows what they're doing? And, somebody that's endorsed by lifelong Republicans like Liz Cheney, like Adam Kinzinger, like Dick Cheney, for example. Sure. I think it's completely different. Don't get me wrong. There are people on the left who are very just left, right? And there are people on the right who are just very right. But I don't think the division and the partisanship is mainly coming from the left.
I had this conversation. I'm reluctant to even bring it up, but I had this conversation with my best friend who I told you, I've been a lifelong Democrat for a long time. I just recently was like, I can't, man. I can't. I got to stop drinking the Kool-Aid. I had a conversation with someone. We were talking about the demographics of abortion, people who get abortions. Yeah. Now, mind you, when I say this, I was born in Houston. I lived in a town called Alief, okay? And it's an inner city, impoverished area when I was probably, I don't know, 2 to 6.
Yeah.
And in this conversation with this particular person, I brought up the fact that there are inner city youths who are getting abortions at an alarming rate. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think you should use it as birth control, right? One of the things that's kind of a hard sticking point for me. Obviously, all of the topics that are important, ectopic pregnancy, rape, all of those things I think should be allowed. You should be allowed to get an abortion if you want. Obviously, this is a heated debate or a heated topic, but nonetheless, when I mentioned inner city, I was attacked by the entire group, calling me a racist because I said inner city, and they said, "Oh, it's a racist trope." And I'm like, "Excuse me, come again? How am I engaging in racism by saying something that I am? Hispanic people are in inner city, you name it." And it's like these overreaches and the constant expanding vocabulary for dialogue is just maddening, dude. I'm sorry. And I think you're a very articulate guy, and I've had 2 great conversations with you. But there comes a time where you got to go, okay, you guys have got to dial it back, man, because you are expanding at such an accelerated rate of like your boundaries and what's infringing upon you and what you need from everybody else in order to coexist. And it's just not a healthy plan of attack. So that's the reason why I've kind of pulled back, man. It's tough. It's tough to watch. I'm not saying that I'm, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Finish, please.
I'm not saying that I'm, going and buying my MAGA hat. I'm just saying there's some common ground. And that was the point I was trying to make. My best friend and me had this conversation. He said, "Jesse, common sense Democrats don't think this way." And I'm like, buddy, I'm finding it harder and harder to find these people that are, left center, and just center. Like I'm hoping they exist, but there's a lot of very fringe people who live on these extreme ends, both right and left.
But I'd say it's far more prevalent on the right than the left. And I think that there's a nuanced conversation to be had here regarding what you just discussed. So I would describe myself as a liberal. I'm not super, super far left, right? And I think that there's a place for, trying to, in the way that we talk to each other, the way that we debate, having it be, I don't know what the word is, having it be accepting and not, offensive, because a lot of our political debate can be that. Have it civil. Having it be civil. And you know what I mean? So I think in that way, there is a good faith intention behind it. But I think that it can be taken too far. I think that if we police every word that somebody who disagrees with us says, then there's no productivity in that conversation. So I don't know what your interaction was with your friends, but just saying the words inner city is not bad. Obviously I don't understand the objection there, but I do think that there is an argument to be made that when we're talking and debating, we have to be careful about how we speak about people, because historically, people of color, minorities, women have been at the end of a lot of really disgusting treatment over time. You know what I mean? And I think that we have to work as a society to be better than that. But it doesn't mean that Democrats are, out of our minds. It just means that we want a more equal society. We recognize that there's still more work to do to pursue that equal society, but also Democrats are common sense. Kamala Harris is I want to expand healthcare for veterans. I want to make sure that you can buy a house. I want to give a tax cut to a bunch of people, all these things. That's not far left. So I think that maybe what you've experienced is a misinterpretation of what the Democratic Party is, which is easy to do, as we just talked about. Social media is in a crazy place right now, so it's very easy to have a misconception about the Democratic Party. But I don't view the Democratic Party as what you just described with the interaction with your friend.
Let me ask you a question, and think about it before you respond, please.
Sure.
Do you think? I mean, I don't know how much of a cinephile you are, but if you watch movies or not, but do you remember the times where you'd watch these movies and you would see, some cliche scene where somebody charges into a newspaper's editing room and they say something, they go, we can't say that. You should retract that, right?
Yeah.
And, there was repercussions for the things that were printed, and they were, print retractions or something of that nature. We don't have this because this social media seems to be just the Wild West. Not even the Wild West. It's just nauseating that there's so much misinformation.
Yes.
Would you be opposed or, in line with monetary and civil action being taken against people who openly and willingly spread and disseminate misinformation?
See, it's really tough, right? Because it's really tough. Like, are you saying on like do they they push social media on, or excuse me, they push misinformation on social media?
Yeah, let's just say that you're saying something that's inaccurate, right? So I had a conversation with my buddy about the Tim Walz thing, and I remember hearing and seeing seemingly strong evidence that Tim Walz had engaged in some sort of impropriety with a younger. You know what story I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know the story you're talking about.
Was it fake?
Yeah, no, it's totally fake.
So then why wouldn't? Okay, so let's say that it was fake on both sides. If these stories are being disseminated, why should there not be the ability to have legal recourse against whoever's doing it?
Well, there is like, it gets really fishy because when you're a public figure like Tim Walz, or if you're a private figure, you could take legal action against that person with a defamation lawsuit or libel, whatever. I think it was Twitter. So just defamation generally, you can sue somebody for defamation. But when you're Tim Walz, it becomes increasingly difficult to do that because there's certain bars you have to hit when it comes to defamation. Like, you have to prove that it hurt you in some way. You have to prove that damage. And it's really hard to do that as a public figure. Like, how do you prove as like somebody who is being discussed, by the entire country, that this individual person hurt you with this false claim? It just gets really hard when you're like a famous person, right? So there is recourse for that. And I do think that there has to be more regulation on social media companies, or just more regulation on the information that is spread out by social media companies. And I think that, I'm not sure if the government is best suited to do that. It more I think has to be these companies. So Twitter is the Wild West. Twitter, there's so much misinformation on Twitter. It's a disastrous place over there. And I think hopefully both people on both sides of the aisle can recognize that. But there are other social media companies that I think have better regulation. Like, I don't fully agree with it, but like Meta, I think is a bit better. I think TikTok is definitely better on regulation than Twitter. So I don't know. It's really hard to say. It's really hard to say. That's not an answer whatsoever to your question, because I don't know.
Yeah, it's a complex issue because there's so much. I don't know how many. What is it? 200. How many users are estimated to be on TikTok?
I don't know. I think it's a lot. I can look it up.
200 million, a billion? I don't know.
In the United States or globally?
Globally. I mean, obviously, our laws would only.
Oh, holy God. So both there's a Chinese version of TikTok and there's a rest of the world version of TikTok. Apparently, it's 2.5 billion daily active users worldwide, which is crazy to think about.
And it begs the next question: does it not scare you? I mean, you plan on having kids, Harry?
I don't know.
I know you're young. I'm just saying, is it something that you like? Do you think later on you'll find the woman and settle down and have kids?
Possibly.
It's a scary world, man. When you think about, like, I walked into an office today and I looked at it. It just hit me like a, frying pan to the face. Every single person in like some uniform posture sat there with these glowing screens, just, emblazoning their faces and just zombified. And I'm like, God, this is how it is every single day. And like, I grew up in a time where like we went outside and climbed trees and swung from, rope swings and rode bikes and it's kind of like that, I don't know. I digress, but it is a very complex and hard thing to tackle because there's such a volume of this stuff happening. And I think people are like, this is too big of a problem to handle. How do you handle it?
But that's why I think it's imperative that we take it upon ourselves to do our part. So like RFK Jr. objectively has spread a lot of misinformation. The man he endorsed, Donald Trump, objectively has spread a lot of misinformation. And I'm not saying that anybody out there hasn't lied once in their lives, but Kamala Harris, I would argue again, is objectively more truthful than either of these two people. So I think this is one of the greatest issues of our time, which is the misinformation crisis, where our social media, everywhere you look, is just plagued with falsehoods from bad actors at home and abroad. Mm-hmm. So we have to take it upon ourselves to vote for people and support people in positions of power and support companies that are willing to pursue truth, even if we don't like that truth, even if that truth is uncomfortable, but the truth nonetheless. And Kamala Harris has done that her entire career, certainly as a prosecutor in the courtroom, pursuing the truth, fighting for the truth, whereas Trump has been a liar his entire life. And RFK Jr. has certainly engaged in these lies, entertaining some of Donald Trump's lies about the election, about Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and whatever. So we have a responsibility. And if you care about this, which I truly do believe you do, it is just contradictory with your vote.
Like I said, I voted for RFK for that. That was my main reason, because I watched, a lot of his presentations. Another thing that really just blew me away about him was he gave his mock version of the State of the Union address, and he gave it both in Spanish and he gave it in English. And the fact that he took the time to learn a second language, it was just a lot about him, and it was a very compelling story when you watch him talk about these things that I've known about for a long time. Before I got into banking, I worked in the food industry. I worked in the restaurant business, and sadly, to my shame, we used to laugh at people. They were like, "Oh, you got what do they call it? Got a gluten allergy, right?" And I'm talking like 2003, 2004, and you snicker, and then 20 years later, you're like, "Oh my God." Like, you got family members that now have this, and you see all of the hyper flavorful foods that have very little nutritional value in them, and it's like, it sucks, man, and it's all for money, my man. Everything is there is one driving force, no matter what you talk about, any conversation that you want to have, unless it's a spiritual conversation, and that too has been monetized. If you have some of these crazy evangelist people who want to dig in your pockets, but everything is monetized. And our kids are growing up with this. I do think, and I'm going to be, genuine here for a moment, I do appreciate your platform, right? I've had a couple of debates with Harry, and I've only had one debate with not with Harry, with Dean, and it wasn't a good one, And I think, in my opinion, I caught him on his heels on a topic, and I think he's not as patient as you. I saw you last night talking to some kid, and I'm don't judge me, but I was having a bit of a nervous breakdown, and I got a McDonald's burger. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like parked in the parking lot, listening to your live, watching this kid talk about whatever, and I'm like, how is he doing this? Like, I'm losing my mind listening to this kid talk right now. Yeah. But anyway, I appreciate what you do, and it's good that you're coming at it from an educated angle and trying your best to inform people. But it's a freaking real problem, man. There's a lot of big issues, man, that face the entire world right now.
Yeah. Well, it's a scary time. It's a scary time, not to be too nihilistic, you might say, but it is a scary time. And so I share your sentiment. I disagree with your vote, but look, I appreciate the conversation. We'll leave it there. And understand that you're welcome back to have a conversation in the future. I appreciate it. And it's always nice to talk to somebody who actually, not to be mean to other people, not to be mean to the crazy MAGA, but you think about things, which is good. We need more, people
of course, man.
Sit down and do that stuff.
I'm not a yes man, and I'm not somebody who just, follows blindly. I would say I'm very in the middle, and I'm trying to figure out what the best path to, pursue is, but it's a tough one. Anyway, I appreciate it, man. I'll let your next guest come up, but thanks again.
Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate it, man. Have a good one. All right.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was actually a good conversation. I think some people might disagree with my analysis of that conversation. I thought it was good. Because at the end of the day, it's so hard. It's like Oh no, they turned the ball over. Are you kidding me? I'll say that in a second. Nate, thanks for the $5. Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, Omaha, supports Harry. Well, thank you, Nate. I appreciate that. Molly, thank you for the $1. Will you ever do a more chill stream like Chris does on Twitch? Yeah, I used to do some of those on YouTube. I definitely want to do a lot more of those. So absolutely. I really enjoyed when I did them on YouTube. That was pre-election, but no problem bringing them back. Audrey, and the YouTube link is in my bio, by the way. Audrey, thanks for the $1. Did you see that Trump finally made a good cabinet pick today? He appointed you as my future husband. Now that was good. That was good because it genuinely took me off guard. So I respect. I like that one. Thank you, Audrey. Bex, thanks for the $10. Hey, Harry, I love your lives. Hope to see you on my Bumble feed sometime. Well, I hate to break it to you, I don't have Bumble, but I appreciate that. Thank you. And thanks for being in the lives. That means a lot. Molly, thanks for the $2. I'm from Ohio. My heart, the heart of all of it, but my heart belongs to you. God, back to back with some smooth lines here. I can't even lie. Zach, thanks for the $1, man. Can you remind this Muppet guest Trump sent COVID supplies to Putin when Americans needed it? It's a good point. Zach. Thanks for the $5. Oh, and thank you for everything that you do. And thank you for everything that you do. I know you're fighting in your personal life, man. Trust me, I know that. Thanks for everything you do, man. Seriously. Jessica, thanks for the $1. Ask GT about Jesse. He didn't just say inner city. He said other disgusting narratives with it. I mean, yeah, I don't have any insight to that, obviously. So I don't know. Avneet, thanks for the $1. I've been really struggling mentally. I lost all of my friends a year ago, and in my family, I only have my dad. I feel so alone and hopeless and have no motivation to do anything. Do you have any advice for me? I do. But let me just read these last two because I want to give you a longer answer. Hi, Harry. Thank you, Sydney, for the $5. Hi, Harry. Thanks to you, Dean and Parker and Chris. I was able to educate a friend today and have a peaceful conversation with a stranger out in the wild. That's what it's going to take, ladies and gents. It's going to take us like talking to each other again to try to convince people to vote for better candidates in the future. You know what I mean? Bria, thanks for the $1. Would you be able to accept my message request? I have some questions for you. It's Bria's book obsession. I will definitely do my best to get to that for sure. Now, if neat, I want to give you some hindsight, or I don't know how to. Do I have advice? I think you just have to keep pushing forward. Like, I don't know what happened with you, and I know this is like so cliche. I don't know what happened with you and your friends, and like why you guys had a falling out. But I think that a lot of people have this moment in their lives where they have like a realignment in their social groups, and they have a realignment in who they like prioritize, who they care about, who they associate with. And you might just be in that moment of a realignment. And I think that like change is good. So it might be really tough to be in the change right now where you don't really have your friends anymore. And maybe in your only family, you only have somebody that you really love and care about. But it doesn't mean that there's not going to be people in the future that you align with more. You'll meet more people. You'll be exposed to more people. And I don't know how old you are, like what point in life you are, but maybe you're going to college or maybe you're going to work a new job and you'll be exposed to more people there. And at the end of the day, look, if your friends were willing to ditch you and get rid of you in like a year ago, they're not your real friends, right? They're not your real friends. They didn't care for you in the way that your friends should care for you. So just remember that. Remember that you are enough. You're amazing. And even if your friends don't recognize that, we do. So I appreciate you. Keep fighting, all right? It's tough out there. Daisy, thanks for the $1. Check Twitter DMs after. I have a question about politics. You got it. I got you. I will. Cole, thanks for the $1.11. Check on Parker. I did. We are. I texted him. Lex, thanks for the $25 for the tolerance you have for stupidity is impressive. Well, I appreciate that, Lex. It means a lot. Venmo, Cash App, link in bio if you want to support the live. It means a lot. No pressure, obviously, but the link in the bio, or the link to the Cash App and the Venmo is in the bio if you want to support the live. And also drop a follow if you haven't already. We do these lives all the time. It means a lot. So definitely drop a follow. Let me just check on something. We are 72 followers away from 300 for the night. So drop a follow. Let's try to get to 300 followers. And also make sure to keep double tapping the screen. Fill up that entire bar. You guys are going crazy with the likes. When the bar comes up, fill it once, twice, 3 times, maybe 4. It helps boost the live, send it out to more people, that good stuff. So anyway, aside from all that, I apologize. If you're MAGA, let me know in the chat. I'll bring you up and you can tell me why you're MAGA. Sorry, I'm texting Parker. Let me get somebody up here. Tim saying that he's MAGA. Let's give Tim a shot. Did the Bengals convert?
No, they did not.
Did they turn the ball over?
Actually, no. It's a 2nd and 10. They're driving. So
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Harry, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I would just say that I'm a lifelong Republican. Come from a dad that's a pastor, so very faith-based person. So a lot of my political views are going to come from kind of that kind of a background. I can hope that you can see where I'm coming from on this.
Sure.
But I think one thing that would help on both sides is if we end stuff like this, like behind you where it says Trump is going to be terrible. Like, I don't think he's going to be terrible. Like, honestly, I don't like Joe Biden. I didn't like Obama. I think Obama really isolated me and things that I was doing. And, I think that, things aren't always on a scale from always being either a 1 or being a 10. And that, when we can find common ground on things is when we actually are going to be able to make change. And I think there's just too much. Like, I listen to you, I listen to Parker, I listen to Dean a lot. And I can see where you guys are going, but I think you guys lose some of your message on trying to debate everybody instead of just coming on here and saying, hey guys, finding a common ground and then working off of a common ground to bring people in, because there's a ton of things I don't like that Donald Trump does. I don't like the way that he talks to women. I don't. I have a daughter. She's 5 years old. I wouldn't want somebody talking to my daughter that way, but I also
want them to be president.
What?
That's the thing. It's like, I have no doubt that there are a lot of Trump supporters who have objections to Donald Trump's behavior out there. I don't think that every Trump supporter loves women being assaulted. But the problem is that that's not enough for you to say, I won't vote for Trump. That's what we take issue with. That's why we are...
I got to weigh everything, Harry. I got to weigh everything. You got a guy that ran as vice president with Kamala Harris that has legislation passed in his state where if a child believes that they're transgendered, and I'm not trying to debate transgender, not transgender. What I'm saying though is for me, being a faith-based person, he has laws that are anti-intervention on that. So now
it's not anti. What do you mean anti-intervention? What do you mean by intervention?
Look it up in Minnesota. It's illegal for me to go seek counseling help to try to give my child
good.
No, not good. Not good.
Wait, are you a proponent of therapy for people that are trans or gay? Like, do you think that it can make them not trans or not gay?
I'm just saying that maybe an 8-year-old hasn't fully made up their mind, and it's not good, Harry. I should be able to bring my 8-year-old child over to a pastor and have an open conversation, and I'm not even talking about conversion. I should be able to consult my pastor and and look for things that are within my belief systems without the government coming in and removing my child from my home.
I don't think that's the law in Minnesota. I think you're misciting this. Like, if you want to have what am I looking up here? Because I don't know Minnesota law, obviously, but what am I looking up?
Well, I had to look it up. I had to look it up, Harry, because I heard stuff again on misinformation being out there. And then I had to go on and research it for myself because the Democratic Party was putting out Tim Walz as a candidate. So then if you look up, I can't quote a statute right now. I don't have it.
I'm looking this up right now. And are you citing Tim Walz's Minnesota becoming a trans refuge state? I'm not finding anything of kids can be, if you you know what? I can actually almost guarantee that in the state of Minnesota, if you take your kid to a pastor and you're trans and the kid's trans, that you can't be arrested or have your kid taken away from you, right? But what the intent with a lot of these laws is that, I think, are you referencing a school law or something? I don't even know what this law that is you're citing. I don't even
If I look it up here, I think I'd probably lose the feed because all I have is my phone that I'm talking to you on right now. I don't have another device to go out there and actually look at it. Now I would be more
okay.
Than
Listen to this. Yeah. Fact-checking J.D. Vance's attacks on Tim Walz over a transgender sanctuary law in Minnesota. He said he signed supported legislation that would take children away from their parents if their parents don't want to do sex changes. He wants the government to steal your children from you if you don't agree with Tim Walz's values. That it's not small government, that it's disgusting. He should be ashamed of himself. That is false. It's not true. Since Mr. Walz was picked as VP, Kamala Harris's running mate, conservative groups, including the Alliance Defending Freedom, have claimed that the Minnesota state authorities can terminate the parental rights of parents who prevent their children from receiving gender-affirming care. A spokeswoman for Mr. Vance cited the Alliance's arguments to support the claim, but those groups have been unable to name a case in which that has happened, pointing instead to a hypothetical scenario about a provision in the law that grants Minnesota courts, quote, temporary emergency jurisdiction during custody disputes crossing state lines if a child has, quote, been unable to obtain gender-affirming care. PolitiFact, citing legal experts and family law practitioners in Minnesota, concluded that, quote, the law does not authorize the government to take custody of children whose parents don't consent to them getting gender-affirming care.
Right, but it can come in and rule on custody of the kids, so it can move that kid from one family member to another family member, which is again.
I'm not seeing that either. I'm not seeing that either.
You just read it.
That's not at all what I read. It's not at all what I read. Your claim was that there's a law in Minnesota that allows children to be taken from parents if they do X, Y, and Z. It's just not the case. That's why I said I don't even know what law you're talking about, but intuitively that sounds completely false because I don't even know what mechanism there would be that would allow for a state government to do that or the federal government to do that at all. We can't hear you when you're off the app, by the way.
Sorry, I was trying to look it up, but again, like I would have to get off my. If you look up anti-intervention in Minnesota trans law, I think you would find exactly what I'm talking about because it wasn't very hard for me to find it. It wasn't very hard for me to find it, and it had to do directly with seeking counseling for children that have these ideas or have these feelings that, one way or another, that if a boy feels like they're a girl, if a girl feels like they're a boy, whatever those cases. And I'm not even trying to say that I'm anti-transgender, but I'm also saying that I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old at my house, and sometimes they don't always understand exactly everything that they think or everything that they're saying. Go ahead.
I'm just reading this from the Minnesota House of Representatives. Specifically, the law prohibits the enforcement of a court order for removal of a child or enforcement of another state's law being applied in a pending child protection action in Minnesota when the law of another state allows the child to be removed from the parent or guardian for receiving medically necessary health care or mental health care that represents the gender identity of the patient. The law gives Minnesota courts jurisdiction in most situations where a child is present in Minnesota for the purpose of obtaining gender-affirming care. So there's nothing about this. This is from, by the way, the Minnesota House of Representatives. There's nothing in this law that says that if you go to like a pastor, your kid can be taken from you. I think you just might be a victim. I was just speaking to the gentleman before you. I think you just might be a victim of more misinformation.
Okay, and hopefully I think I'll be able to find what I'm talking about, and I'll DM you, and I hope that if I find that you would also put out there like, okay, hey, this guy did find this over there. He was correct on this, because again, I don't have something right in front of me where I can pull up the statute, but there was like a statute in the article that gave the exact statute that I'm referring to. But I don't think it's just this. I think, for you to go back and you're saying like, hey, I don't really feel like with your conversation with the last person that you're talking with, that you feel like most of the division and the talk is coming from one side. And by the way, the Bengals just picked up a big first down there.
Who caught it?
Burton, I think. I'll have to look.
I needed Jamar Chase.
I have Jamar Chase on fantasy too.
Yeah, I do too.
Maybe we should just talk about fantasy. We can find a lot of conversation. But so like when Biden comes out and says all Trump supporters are garbage,
he didn't say that.
He didn't say Trump supporters are garbage, or Trump voters are garbage. What would
he said that the speakers at Trump's MSG rally were garbage, which I would agree.
Right, but Harry, and again, I could be wrong on this, but I believe that joke was more referencing the amount of trash that was on the island of Puerto Rico's left from the hurricanes. No, you can shake your head like that.
Come on. This is crazy cope right here. Come on.
No, it's not.
It is. That's a crazy cope, bro.
In 2020, Biden and Harris both ran on, hey, we would like to help clean up the mess that was going on in Puerto Rico. I don't think he was actually referring to Puerto Rican people as garbage. I think he was just saying it's a floating island of garbage, and he was referring to the trash from the
No. He was not referring to the hurricane that hit, I believe it was like in 2018 as well. He was not referring to the hurricane that hit in 2018 in Puerto Rico. And if that were the case, then man, wouldn't that be an indictment of Donald Trump? The fact that it hit during his administration and it was still like covered in apparent trash. Like that's obviously not what he was saying. He was making a joke about, Puerto Rico and insulting the American people that live there. That was obvious. And, we can look at his other jokes to see the context of which this guy was making jokes. Like, he was making another joke, which I think calling it a joke is generous because I think it was just offensive, about people of color eating watermelon, right? That's just straight up racist trash. Right. I think that if you're speaking at a political rally, if you're speaking in any facet and you're making jokes like that, I think that's garbage. And I think that Joe Biden describing it as garbage makes sense to me. I'd describe it the same way. I think that if you're going to make racist jokes at people's expense, especially at a political rally where you have, tens of thousands of people watching in person, X amount of people watching live. Yeah. Fuck you. Yeah.
I mean, of course, I'm not going to stand up with any, sort of racist comments. I've already told you on this feed here that, I have children. I'm a white male, but my wife is half Mexican, half black, and Harry too. Like, you can fact check this on me too. It's very easy to find. But my wife we live in Arizona. I'm in Tucson, so I'm a border city, right? My wife is Mexican. Her family's from Mexico. Her dad's side of her family was black. You can look up her dad in the news in Tucson, Arizona. His name is Tyrone Johnson, who was killed by police in Tucson, Arizona. An unarmed black male. So my family has ties that would be pushing agendas from the Democratic Party. But I think we miss things on not acknowledging that people's hearts and intentions. Like when I say, hey, I want to, I'm pro-life, I get kind of labeled that, oh my gosh, like I hate my daughter and I hate my wife. Like that's not the case, Harry. Like I look at it as a living human being, and that's my viewpoint. But you have to understand that even if I'm wrong scientifically based off of what you're saying here, that my heart, Harry, is saying that, hey, listen, I think that whatever you want to call itself is actually a human being, and that's what I'm trying to protect. And instead of poking fun of somebody and saying, oh my gosh, this person hates their daughter or votes against their daughter or votes against their wife or is now against their mother, that's a very divisive statement to make.
But isn't there some truth to that? Can't you see some truth in that? So. If the data is clear that number one, these abortion bans are not stopping people from getting abortions. It just incentivizes people to either get abortions illegally or put themselves in a situation where they're in danger, or it even forces some women who would previously be able to get an abortion in an emergency situation to be denied that care, maybe get sepsis and die. So if the same amount of people are getting abortions, but more women are dying because they don't get reproductive care, can you not see how that in and of itself isn't a vote against the rights of your wife, your daughter, your mother? And can't you see how your heart, your heart might say, yeah, I'm pro-life. I would never personally get an abortion. And that's within your right. That's why I'm pro-choice. I'm perfectly happy with you having that view for you and your family. But then why would you stop another woman who disagrees with you on the morality of that, which is fine, from exercising her right to choose and exercising her right to have a different opinion than yours?
Sure. And I can understand again, I can see some of the viewpoints on what you're saying. And I think too, I think you have to start out. I don't think you can find a single state in the United States where abortion is outlawed in the instance for saving the mother's life. I don't think you'll find a single state that has that in their laws.
It's not.
And then too, but hold on. So Arizona voted for Trump, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like, okay. So on the same night that they did that, we also passed a abortion legislation. So actually, we voted for Donald Trump to go into office, and in the exact same night, we voted to amend our Constitution to allow more access to abortion. But if you talk to Democrats and you talk to liberal voters, they will act like that doesn't exist in America. And that existed because it got ruled down from the Supreme Court, Harry. That brought that attention to the state level. And then the voters in my state changed that law. Whether I agree with it or not, Harry, I live in Arizona. I voted, didn't go my way. I still live in Arizona. But that only got changed because of the Supreme Court changing the decision on Roe versus Wade. You would have to admit that.
Yeah, that 100%. The reason the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade is why that happened. But this initiative on the Arizona ballot should have never happened in the first place. Roe v. Wade should have never been overturned in the first place, meaning that this should never happen in the first place. Women's rights and their health care shouldn't be voted on, right? Like, making it harder for women to obtain health care should not be voted on. This should just be a right that women have that they can access. Even if you disagree, even if you're like, I don't like that, that's fine. You don't have to do it. Nobody's forcing you. Nobody's dragging your wife or anybody in your family to an abortion clinic or an OBGYN or whatever it might be to get an abortion.
Sure, but I still think that there's not a difference between that 5-week-old fetus or whatever you want to call it than my 5-year-old daughter. I think that baby deserves rights too. And so that's what I'm saying.
If you have like a fertilized egg in like a petri dish and you have a 6-year-old sitting in a house fire, you can only save one. Who are you saving?
Of course, my daughter, right? But that's
I'm not even talking about your daughter. I'm just talking like a random 6-year-old, because I know the daughter would give you like an emotional connection. So I'm trying to remove that. You have like a 6-year-old in a house fire versus a fertilized egg, which you would define as life, in a petri dish. Who do you save?
Yeah, I would save the 6-year-old.
Okay, but why would you save the 6-year-old?
That's also not a good example. I worked because Harry, okay, there's a 6-year-old. I'm going to ask you a question now. Mm-hmm. Okay. You're both upstairs in a bedroom. You can only save one. You have a 98-year-old grandma that can hardly move and walk, and you have a 6-year-old daughter or a 6-year-old. You don't know these people. I'll go with your thing. And a 6-year-old that's fully healthy, and you have to make a decision who you're going to carry downstairs, and one is going to stay upstairs and die, and the other one's going to get out safely. I think most people in the right mind is going to take the 6-year-old because it has a lot longer life expectancy than a 90-year-old grandma. I worked in the automobile industry at Geico for claims, Harry. And guess what? If I got into a car accident and an elderly person got injured or passed away in that accident, it wasn't the same monetary value as somebody that was young.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes, Harry.
I think that the answer there is that Democrats are pragmatic with life. Or not even, this is not even like a Democrat versus Republican. I think just like saying like, yeah, I'd save the 6-year-old is obviously the correct choice as when you're comparing it to like a 98-year-old person, because we're just pragmatic. So, and you'd also acknowledge that you'd be pragmatic when it comes to a fertilized egg in a petri dish versus a 6-year-old. But the point is that you view those things, or you think that the law should view the petri dish and the 6-year-old as the same. I'm saying that the law should not view them as the same. So that's the difference here. The comparison of the 98-year-old versus the 6-year-old is just a matter of pragmatism and being logical. But the matter of the petri dish and the fertilized egg versus the 6-year-old is a matter of, do you see them the same? I don't see them the same. I wouldn't even blink. If I see a 6-year-old or a petri dish, fuck that petri dish. Get it out of here. I don't care. I'm taking that 6-year-old.
Sure, I can understand that. But one of my points I was making to you, Harry, is that using terminology that I don't care about my daughter, I don't care about my wife, and I don't care about my mom is not going to bring people together and change people and have a productive conversation.
Maybe you're right. Maybe that's inflammatory language. But for us who are like pro-choice and like for, I think, women out there, it feels like that because the data is so clear that when women have access to reproductive care, and this is by the WHO for countries all around the world, their life expectancy is better, their financial status is better, their quality of life is better, all of the things surrounding their lives are better, right? And then when you factor in the logic behind it of like, okay, well, having national abortion bans can easily lead to women who need an abortion in an emergency situation being prevented from getting that. And it can easily lead to women who've been assaulted not being able to get care that they need. It can easily lead to like 18-year-old girls who want to go off to college and have a career who made a mistake with their boyfriend having to become a mother and put their dreams on hold. It can lead to all of that stuff. And even from a philosophical perspective, like how can you justify, legislation that controls a woman's body and controls a decision, and just kind of diving into that.
Again, it goes off of.
But just to finish, all of these different things are on the side of being pro-choice. So there's not a single argument in favor of pro-life, and then especially when you factor in the real world examples. So for women and for folks out there who read these stories every single day, for OBGYNs, for nurses, for doctors, it's very easy for people to feel like if you have a daughter, a mother, a wife in your life, voting to restrict their health care almost feels like you are feeling moral over them.
Right, but Harry, how are you going to bring people in? So if my wife was awake, I'd bring her downstairs and have her talk to you, but she has to get up very early in the morning. She's a flight attendant.
Let her be.
Yeah, but she voted for Trump. She voted no on the initiative. So, but yet you still have people in your party that will go out and say that she's uneducated. She's a college graduate. She's a college graduate from ASU. She's a mother. She's a hardworking person. And yet somehow she gets labeled as a dumb, uneducated woman that doesn't know what's good for herself. And that's my point is when you were saying earlier that this verbiage and this division only comes from one side or mainly comes from one side. I don't agree with that at all. And I'm much more, I know I probably haven't sounded very centered here on this conversation with you, but I am much more centered. I feel like most things aren't right and left. Most of it is actually found in common ground somewhere in the middle, right? I feel like most of our solutions aren't so much of completely having all access to abortion, no matter if we're at 38 weeks, and probably the solution probably isn't somewhere where there's no access at all, right? So it's probably somewhere in the middle. And I've listened to like your buddy Parker. He does. It's more in the middle for that guy. I've listened to him. He says, I don't know exactly 24 weeks, right? It's basically
24 weeks. I'm there as well.
And you're there too. So isn't that much more in the middle?
But that's Roe v. Wade. We're arguing for Roe v. Wade. That until viability, a state before that point doesn't have an interest in regulating that decision. That women before 24 weeks, 20 to 24 weeks, have the ability, every state around the country, to get an abortion if they need. But after that point, if states want to regulate it, that's fine. But the only instance in like third trimester that must be included is if a woman is having an emergency situation where she needs an abortion. So sure. That's my view, but that's not Donald Trump's view. He voted for a 6-week abortion ban in Florida.
How do you know he voted for it?
Because he said he did.
Well, when did he say that?
When he was asked about it. He was asked about the abortion initiative in Florida. One day he said that he was not going to vote for it. Then the next day he said, no, I am going to vote for it because the pro-life people got pissed off at him. And so he voted for a 6-week abortion ban to remain the law in Florida. And of course he brags about overturning Roe v. Wade, which is the middle ground that you and I just discussed. I think that's a middle ground. At the center of this conversation is like, just wanting government to stay out of women's doctors' offices. That's what we want, right? The discussion, the decision should not be between a woman and the government and her representative and a doctor. It should be between a woman and her doctor. And we have this middle ground of what you just acknowledged. But Donald Trump and the Republicans don't stand for that middle ground. They want the government to be involved in these conversations.
Well, I don't really necessarily agree that everybody feels the exact same way as like me and guys like, Charlie Kirk out there. I think you look at, Tulsi Gabbard. I think you look at, Vivek and some of these other people. I don't think that that's exactly what they're saying. And then looping in and saying that this one portion of a party is going in this direction is the same way of me saying like, oh my gosh, hey, Democrats want to be able to have abortions on 38-week-old babies because one governor one time made a statement. I don't think that's fair for me to put that on Democrat. What?
That's not what I'm saying.
I'm sorry,
the majority of Republicans are pro-life to the point where they want it banned.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna, misrepresent to you that I don't really disagree with that, and that's what I would vote for. But I wouldn't. Sure, I think again, Harry. I think I have to live in a country where I can't completely force my beliefs on every single person. And in fact, in being a faith-based person here, Harry, God doesn't control me and force me to do everything that he does. You have to hope that people make up their own mind and their own decisions and things like that, which I understand that, Harry. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that that's still a baby. And I don't think that 6-week embryo or 5-week embryo or 3-week embryo is not a baby. You know what I mean? Like, that's just my viewpoint, and that's what I believe. And what I am going to continue to vote in that direction because I'm trying to protect that life. I'm trying to protect that. Go ahead.
The point is like, yeah, if that's like the way you feel, that's perfectly fine. You can believe that and you can apply that to your family. But you were just acknowledging that in the United States of America, you can't expect that your views are going to be put on everybody else.
But that's why I don't get angry when things don't go my way.
Well,
that's why I don't get.
But respectfully, like abortion not going your way. Here's the thing. Here's the difference, right? When an abortion initiative doesn't go your way, you'll be fine, right? Your life changes. Your life doesn't change at all. None. No change to your life. When an abortion initiative does go your way, there are women whose lives do change. They wake up the next day with less rights than the day before. So that's the thing, right? So
at
like,
what point?
I understand why you don't get upset, but women are really upset out there about this stuff.
Sure. But Harry, at what point you're saying that at 24 weeks, then at that point, you're willing to step in and say, hey, listen, now all of a sudden you shouldn't have unlimited access to this healthcare anymore. So you are still saying as a male that you're willing to pass laws or support legislation that wouldn't give women access to healthcare at 25 weeks.
Yeah, I think, but we all acknowledge that there's like, it's kind of like arbitrary when it comes to where you draw the line. Right. It really does come down to that. Like, there's no definitive point where everybody, or it's like kind of objective as to where we draw the line. So it is somewhat arbitrary, but we have to like conclude as a society where the best point to draw the line is, because there has to be some line drawn. Like, I don't think anybody supports like, on the 8th month and 30th day, 29th day that a woman can have an abortion. Right. I don't think anybody's arguing for that. So the most logical thing is to like look at these different lines in a pregnancy and see where it makes the most sense. And so when we come down at 24 weeks, it gives women ample time to, first of all, find out they're pregnant, get tests done to ensure that the pregnancy is safe and that everything is going as planned. And also make a choice if they don't want it, if they don't want that pregnancy, to be able to terminate it. And also if there's, I don't know, hypothetically, a long wait list to get an abortion, or there's some backup in that state because there's not many OBGYNs, it gives them ample time to get to that appointment.
Sure,
and also having viability makes the most sense, because then theoretically after that point, the fetus could live without the mother. Like, they could live, outside of the uterus, right? So that makes the most sense. Any point before that doesn't make any sense. There's no other line that you can draw that makes, like, what? You're just going to, like, 6 weeks makes no sense. Most people don't know that they're pregnant. 10 weeks makes no sense. 15 weeks makes no sense. 20 to 24 weeks to me, in my view, makes the most sense. That's why.
But again, when you're talking about, we can all agree that eventually, without a medical intervention or something happening, that's going to grow to be a human being and be a person just like me and you, right? So when you're talking about something and then using terms as arbitrary on when to end that, that's a very dangerous thing to even consider or even really have a conversation when you're talking about, it being an arbitrary discussion. Like, I mean, come on. Like, what if that baby could leave at 22 weeks?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's circumstantial, of course, but I think Law of the Wild's here, so maybe we bring him up. But he just put it nicely in the chat, where it's just like we're just trying to decide when the government has an interest in intervening here.
And I'll give you this, Harry. I look at all things, and I think if you actually, look at things on a biblical standpoint, which obviously I'm telling you I do, there are some evidence that in the Bible where there are some scriptures where it does kind of preclude that maybe that life isn't valued at the same level as the mother. And I think if you look it up, it's somewhere in Exodus where it says, like, if you kill a lady or you kill a woman, you owe the person whatever it is, $10. But if the baby dies, then you only owe the person $2. I'm giving kind of an example of what the scripture says without quoting the exact line on the scripture. So I can understand some of that what you're saying is, but even as a society, Harry, if I get into a car accident and you end the life of a baby and at 12 weeks, you can get charged with murder of that.
Now, hold on. I'm going to invite Law of the Wild up here, but I do want to preface, and I feel like this has happened way too long. Law, this is probably the last conversation, so we're kind of bringing you up on the tail end here, but we'll bring you regardless if you want to come up. The choice is there. Well, with a car crash, I don't know if the car crash is like an accurate example, but like the point there is with the way that, I should say, the reason that the law is written that way, that if somebody takes the life of a mother and she's pregnant, that it can be charged as two murders, is that's not a consensual termination of pregnancy. Oh, sorry. There was a huge echo. That's not a consensual termination of a pregnancy. That's an unconsensual taking of a pregnancy. That's the difference. So when a mother terminates her pregnancy, that's her making a choice for herself and her body. She's saying, yes, I want to do this. But if her life is taken, or the life of her fetus is taken without her consent, that's a violation of her.
Sure, but at that point there, now you're talking about morality. Right?
No.
I mean, you absolutely are, Harry, because if you're saying, okay, hey, listen, you're either killing it or you're not killing it, period. Right? It either has value at 12 weeks or it doesn't have value at 12 weeks. You can't put the person's emotions that's carrying the baby as whether that has value or not. That's crazy, Harry. To me, that's crazy.
Just say that last part again.
I'm not trying to attack you.
Say the last part again. What? Wait, just repeat. I'm not understanding your point. What are you saying is crazy?
My point is that what you just said to me sounds like you're saying, like, the only way that you can determine value of life of a 12-week-old fetus would be as if the mom saw value in that life, which to me is wait,
I don't think that's what I'm arguing at all. Like, a woman can see value in her fetus but still want to terminate her pregnancy. Like, I think every woman who does get an abortion understands the value of the fetus, right? Like, so nobody gets an abortion. No woman gets an abortion, and they don't like prance into an OBGYN's office. Like, this is a difficult decision for a lot of people to come to because of the significance. So they understand it. They understand it very well. That's not at all what I'm arguing. It's just that sometimes women are okay with it. Sometimes it's a more difficult decision, but it's a tough decision all around.
I don't know how somebody can take a stance that either, to me, your stance would have to be that, hey, anybody that's behind bars or serving time or had any sort of criminal charges against them for ending a life prior to 24 weeks, if that is your standpoint, should all be let go and should all.
No, I don't think that they should be let go.
Or then it's wrong to end that life because you didn't want it for whatever reason.
No, because at the end of the day, it's that woman's body. That? No, that's not what I was arguing at all. It's that woman's body. It's her pregnancy. If she ends the pregnancy voluntarily, her pregnancy, that's a consensual ending of her pregnancy. That's her body that she's making a decision for. Whereas if somebody else makes that decision for her, that's a violation of her and her bodily autonomy. But I also want to give Law the Wild the opportunity to speak here. So go ahead, Law.
Well, yeah, Tim, like along the same lines, if you and I decide that we're going to get into a boxing match and then I end up losing an eye, I can't go after you for losing my eye because we were engaged in a mutual consenting combat. If you were to just come up to me, cold cock me, and then I lost my eye, I would get significant damages and be able to sue you for a whole lot of money for that. So it's about the consent. It's not about anything based in morals.
Okay, so then you're telling me, you're telling me that if the woman didn't want to go after that person, that then the state shouldn't be able to do that, which isn't the case, sir. If it's not up to the individual whether to prosecute somebody in that kind of situation, the state it's going to take it upon themselves to go after that individual for the crime that was committed.
Right, but it depends on what state you're in. Some states don't even apply that criminal statute, that criminality, until after the point of viability. But there's a whole different process that would have to go into. Like if the person didn't want the pregnancy and that fact came out, then that would be a completely different thing. But we're talking about the consensual thing. There's nothing. You were resting it based on some sort of a moral valuation, and that's just not part of the equation. At all.
When you're criminally prosecuting somebody, then we are talking about morality. We're talking about doing something wrong to another person or another human being.
No, it's the law. It's not morality.
Okay, well then criminally, okay? Then I would never say right now that I would want to criminally charge a woman for having an abortion, but you're saying you do want to criminally charge somebody for ending a life of a fetus at 18 weeks. Then you are saying that ending that life was wrong. And that's where you muddy the water and it gets murky.
It's much more simple than that. You're infringing on somebody's bodily autonomy. You made a decision for them by your actions. They didn't have any weight in that decision making.
Right. So if you harmed a woman's body, then you can get charged for the harm of that person's body. But now you're separating those bodies, and that's what conservatives are saying. Okay. So now you're saying that isn't her body anymore. That's something inside her body, right?
No, you caused damage due to your actions, and you're being held accountable for that damage. And if it happened to the
fetus inside there, not just the mom, they're two separate charges.
Right, which and again, only a handful of states have this, but that's because you are taking an unconsensual ending of that pregnancy. That's what you're being charged for.
Right, but how can you say that that's wrong if you can? So again, it's either wrong or it's not wrong, right? Like there's no way for me to grasp behind.
Again, you are mixing morals and law. It's either legal or it's illegal. Morality is in the eye of the beholder. Sure. That's a subjective.
Let's take away the morality. It's either wrong for that person to whatever hit the stomach and cause that
when you use the word wrong, you're implying morals. No, it's either legal or it's illegal.
We'll use criminal. It's either criminal to harm a woman that causes a pregnancy, or it's either criminal for her to do it. It's got to be one way or another, or it's not criminal. You're still, and the end result is that the fetus is no longer viable or no longer living.
Let me ask you this, and maybe Law, make sure I'm legally correct here, which I think I am. If there's a brain dead patient and a family decides to pull the plug on that brain dead patient, you would agree that that's okay, right?
I would.
To Tim. And then I'm going to say something else after, but I just want to make sure.
Harry, I would lean that way. I'll be honest.
Okay, that's all I need.
I haven't given it much thought, to be honest with you.
Okay. But you would lean that way. I think most people would agree that if a family wanted to pull the plug on their brain dead family member, that they should be able to do that. But what if some random guy came into the hospital and pulled the plug without the family's consent?
Sure, but that's what I'm saying. I haven't thought.
So first of all, law that would be illegal, correct? I think obviously
100%.
Yeah. Okay, so Tim, in that scenario, you would acknowledge that a family member, if they want to pull the plug on their brain dead family member, they should be able to do that. But if a random guy came into a hospital and pulled the plug on their brain dead family member, that you'd be like, yeah, that's wrong. It's all about the consent. Right?
Sure. Well, and again, Harry, I haven't said that I've completely made up my mind one way or another on that. I haven't given all of that, a whole lot of thought because, fortunately, for me, I haven't had a brain dead family member that I've had to go through that process with and have those conversations. And then, again, I've already kind of opened up my doorway there to show you where I think my thinking is. I would consult my dad, who's a pastor. I would pray about things because that's where I see guidance from, right? And
yeah, but I'm not even talking about you. I'm just talking about like where the law stands. We're arguing with the law should be, right?
What my opinion is, and I'm always going to do it from. I mean, that's just the way it is. I think a lot of people are very similar in that, and I would have to kind of see where I believe God's stance would be in that scenario for me to really come with a conclusion on right or wrong. And I think that's where something where like me and you are never going to fully agree on, stances on certain things along those lines.
Well, that's because you're applying your own morality, which is fine. I think that you have every right to try to convince every person to follow whatever moral guidance that you have. But when we're talking about the law, we don't rule based off of subjective morality. We rule based off of like things like basic human rights. And that what happens here is I think you said earlier, if I caught it correctly, that you agree that there are some exceptions. Life of the mother. I don't know where you stand on like grape or anything like that.
No, I said I would 100% support the life of the mother would come first. And I think, and again, I was telling Harry that, I couldn't get you the exact article in Exodus, but there's definitely Bible verses that would suggest that would be the viewpoint of God or of Christianity.
Okay, your Bible has no place in the rule of law in the United States.
Sure, and I can understand that, and I can understand why you would say that. But again, I would just go back to if I believe that is a human being worthy of the same rights and privileges that you, the random lady at Walmart, should all have, then I think that's where we would kind of differ on that.
Well, again, but you have every right to host all of the TikTok lives that you want. You have every right to go to preach on every street corner. I will fight for your right to do that.
Well, thank you.
And undeniably, and regardless of whether I agree with your views or not. But when we're talking about the law, we're talking about at what point does the government have an interest of stepping into this process? And I think it's dangerous when we say that we want the government to step in based off of our subjective morality and not based off of the consent of the governed.
But that's kind of where I'm saying that there's subjective morality on where the viewpoint is, as if saying like, hey, a 12-week-old baby in a stomach is if the mom wants to end the pregnancy for whatever reasons that they have, that's a different scenario than wanting to end the pregnancy unwillingly through somebody causing harm to that child. To me, that's the exact same thing.
Right. And if you want to preach that message out there, again, you have every right to do that. But what we're talking about is the force of government. At what point? In Texas, if you get an abortion after 6 weeks, you could spend up to 99 years in jail, unless it's from some state-approved exception. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that at that point there, that child has the right to live, just like I have the right to live, just like you have the right to live, just like Harry has the right to live, and the random lady at Target has the right to live. Like,
okay, under our Constitution, when do rights begin?
I probably at birth, right?
Yep, the 14th Amendment, first 3 words: all persons born.
All what?
All persons born.
Sure. But then that's also a very scary stance to hang your hat on as well there, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, I'm just guessing that you would probably feel uncomfortable ending a pregnancy at 39 weeks and 5 days.
Morally, I think that's morally reprehensible to have an elective abortion at that point. But also, I know that doctors are not going to do that. You will not find a doctor in the United States who is going to perform that abortion.
I mean, and again, I will give you and Harry some credit that there is misinformation out there, but I have watched plenty of videos where people have made phone calls to people that run abortion clinics in debates on a big stage where they said, hey, this is where I'm at. Am I able to get an abortion? And they'll say, yes, you are. Yes, we've done this before. And I don't think that those are fake videos.
Yeah, I've seen some of those videos too. And what they're always trying to do is steer them to come in and have a conversation. Like, there's nobody that says, yep, no questions asked. Come on in. We'll schedule you right now. They want them to come in because they don't know the circumstances that person's in. Is there a threat to their life? So they wanted to bring them in to have that conversation, because there are abortions that happen at that late point. But every single time, and we're talking less than 0.5% of all the abortions done in the United States, it's because of a fetal abnormality that makes the fetus incompatible with life, or because the mother's health is at severe risk.
Okay, so but again, right there, what you had just said when you were talking about that was, I'm sorry, could you repeat that last thing that you just said there?
Fetal abnormality that's incompatible with life, or because the mother's health is at severe risk.
Right. Okay. It was the 0.5%. So, but when Democrats are talking about the percent of abortions that are happening to rape, incest, and the viability of the mom's life continuing to going on, that's also a very, very small portion. And most of the things that I've seen on that, you're talking about 1%. So to me, now you're starting to talk about a form of birth control. And I think that, again, I have a hard time coming through and saying, like, okay, hey, I made these decisions and I did this, and now I get to just do whatever I want to do. And you know,
right. And I understand your morals on that. And but the thing is, at what point does the government have the right to throw somebody in jail over this?
Well, the government says they have the right to throw somebody in jail if it's not consent. So the government is making that decision.
Yeah, but let's go back to the topic here. There's a woman who wants to terminate her pregnancy for whatever reason. Not rape, not life of the mother. At what point does the government get to throw them in jail if they decide to go through with that?
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
At what point does the government get to throw that woman or her healthcare provider in jail for having that abortion? At what point do you think that should happen?
Listen, I would never criminally charge somebody in that scenario. I would
great.
Never go.
So you're pro-choice, Tim. You're pro-choice if that's your stance.
I'm not.
You're personally pro-life, but if you don't want the government to throw women in jail for having that procedure, you're pro-choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think taking it to a criminal prosecution is I don't think that's always going to be the best case for every scenario, whether somebody does something or doesn't do something here. You can understand that, right? I can say like, hey, if I do this, that's wrong. That maybe that throwing somebody in prison, and now you're kind of going down a road of like, where my views are on prison reform and stuff like that. I don't think that just because I think it's wrong that necessarily throwing somebody in jail would be the right thing to do.
So what should the penalty be then?
I don't know that there should be a penalty. I don't know that. And again, Harry, you could throw your hands back, but
that's not a bad thing. I'm not throwing my hands back as like an FU to you. This is what we are. Anyway.
Sure, but I can say that you're not allowed to do this. I can say you're not allowed to do this, and then also not decide that somebody that does something like this doesn't deserve to have. I can agree that says like, hey, I can agree that I don't want abortion to be legal outside of the standpoint over there, but I can also say like, hey, that this isn't something that I would criminally prosecute.
Right, but Tim, I think that's what we're trying to separate here. Your own personal morals, which again, I support your right to have those and to share those as much as you want. But what the government does, and what the overturning of Roe versus Wade does, is allow the government to punish women and punish doctors for getting this procedure. So if you don't think it should be criminal, what is the government?
To the states, right?
Well, it turned it over to the people and their elected representatives, which absent an act of Congress means that the states. But you're in a state, you're in Arizona, which you have the right to vote on that. 24 states don't give citizens the right to put that ballot up. They have to rely on their heavily gerrymandered state legislatures to do that, and that they don't allow that. But just like we don't allow states to vote on slavery, we don't allow states to vote on whether or not kids have the right to an education. We shouldn't allow them to criminalize women for getting procedures that they believe is in their best interest. And unless you can articulate
that state, right?
They can just leave the state. Yeah, that's an incredibly privileged position. No, I mean, the number one reason that women get abortions is from economic hardship, and you expect them to just be able to pack up and leave?
I'm saying that I want most things to return to the state level on what decisions are being made. That's what I personally would like to have happen. And I think the proof in the pudding is that on most levels that takes, that actually works. You look at again, and I told Harry on this, that the news media and most people will say, oh my gosh, women just lost and women in Arizona just got all their rights restricted. Well, no, actually Trump won and women got more rights, considering to what you guys are saying that, rights are for women in Arizona. So those things coincided, right?
Right, but that was a direct response to the stripping of rights that happened after Roe versus Wade was overturned, and it should have always been an act of Congress, but Congress didn't have the courage to do it. I'm with you there, but what we're talking about is you're contradicting yourself a little bit, because you said you don't think the government should penalize people for doing this, but then you say, well, turn it over to the states, and the states are penalizing people. So maybe your state has expanded rights, but a lot of other states have further restricted them. Some of them had trigger laws that sent their, like Wisconsin, their law went back to the 1860s before Wisconsin was even a state. This is what happens, that women are being criminalized and doctors are being criminalized for this action. And you said you don't support that. So help me reconcile that difference.
My difference is that
thanks, Cass.
Yeah, no problem. The difference is that every action doesn't create the same response, right? I can say that, you can do something that I guess you could be illegal, and that the punishment for that doesn't have to be that you go to prison, correct? I mean, we can all say that certain things that are illegal or not legal don't deserve the exact same punishments and the exact same responses. We can all agree on that, right?
Right. I mean, there's different levels of crime, but my question to you was, you didn't think there should be a criminal penalty. Returning it to the people and their representatives is now creating criminal penalties. So do you support the ability to create a criminal penalty, or do you not think there should be a criminal penalty?
I would not personally. I would not, create a criminal penalty for somebody having an abortion. I think, like Harry said, that is a not an easy decision to make. I think that.
Thanks, Mizzo.
I think that, if somebody makes that decision, that I can, disagree with that decision and then also not put that person in jail, right? I don't see that as being something that I would put somebody in jail for. And I would also say, hey, listen, there's plenty of other crimes that I wouldn't agree to put people in jail.
Yeah. Welcome to being pro-choice. I mean, that's just it.
I think you keep saying that, but again, just because I lead more towards forgiveness and support than prosecution, I don't think that changes of what my choice is on that.
Right. Yeah, I think you're struggling with, because you think if you're pro-choice, you support abortion. But when I'm saying pro-choice, you're pro giving women that freedom absent of government oppression. And while you may morally think that that's the wrong thing, and in a lot of circumstances, I'm right there with you. But what we're talking about is, at what point does the government be able to step in with threat of force? Because that's, at the end of the day, that's all the government has, is the threat of force, and forcing women to into a situation that they don't want to be in. And I don't trust government that much.
Right. So if you don't trust government that much, it's easier to control the government on a state level than it is on a federal level. And that if you look at most of Democrats and their policies and what they support and what they do, is the expansion of a federal government and taking things away from the state levels on things and going towards more of, and this is getting away from abortion now, but now you're just talking about, what's above Harry's head there is Trump is terrible. I think if you look at most of the things that he's trying to do, he's trying to strip away, access of the federal government and take things back down to a state level, which I'm 100% on support of. There's very few things that are done at a federal level that are done on a very efficient and excellent, level of execution. So, I'm all for, I don't think that's one reason why, not just because of my moral beliefs, but another reason that even if you took that away and I wasn't a Christian, I would still vote Republican, because I still want small government. I would still want most of the stuff to be accessed on a state by state level. And my voice is a lot more heard. My vote goes a lot longer on the state level than it will ever go on a federal level, especially with electoral colleges and the way things are going. But I actually live in the district where Juan Ciscomani was running, and my one vote of people that vote, whatever the count was, 400,000 people, even though that one vote's small, I have a bigger voice in that election than I ever will have on a federal level. And the same thing on the just every single thing that you go through. I think that, the Democrats get it wrong on trying to create these government programs on a federal level to fix people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, we went a little bit far afield there. I would agree with you that a lot of decisions are best made at the local level, but when we're talking about things like basic human rights and basic human dignity and people being able to have autonomy in their lives, that those deserve federal protections.
But then, so then then at that point, then you're saying that this was a single issue election. And I don't think that this was a single issue election from.
I never made that claim.
I know, but that's kind of what we're saying here. If you're saying like, hey, listen, people's rights, the only thing that was really going through on you're talking about people's rights is the abortion thing. Outside of that, I don't think you're really talking about people's rights and what was going on in this election on what people were fighting for. And I get it. But again, I think that if you want more rights, you have a bigger voice at a state level than you ever will on a federal level. And then that's where I think that the Democratic Party is going so wrong, is that they're trying to find all of these federal government programs to fix everything in people's lives, and it's just overcomplicating everything in everybody's lives. Like I'll give you the school system. So I actually have 3 kids. So I have a 15-year-old that I put in public school for one day. It was the only A+ district in Tucson, Arizona. So when he was in kindergarten, his very first day of school, I take him into school, right? There is 44 kids in his kindergarten class in the A+ district in Tucson. There's 1 teacher, no teacher's aides, and 24 desks in that classroom. So my 5-year-old has to sit on the floor half the time, and then the other half of the time is going into is getting to be able to sit on a desk. And I walk into the principal's office and I said, hey, listen. I said, why is my kid sitting on the floor? And he's saying, well, we didn't know how many kids were enrolled that were actually going to show up, so we couldn't ask for the right amount of funding. I pulled him out, put him in private school. He had 12 kids in his class, a teacher and a teacher's aide in there, and had a great education going through there. The school system is a complete failure because of the federal government getting involved in making decisions on the Department of Education.
Oh, gosh. Okay, I guess if we want to pivot away, that's fine. What did the federal government do to increase those class sizes?
No, they didn't increase. They didn't allocate spending to allow the teachers to be hired, because you had to figure out how many kids were going to go into that classroom. It took a month and a half to get fixed.
School districts allocate funding, not the federal government.
What?
Your school districts allocate funding through your school board, not the federal government. They get money based off of local property taxes, not the federal government.
That the public schools in Arizona get no money allocated from the federal government, right?
I didn't say that. There are Title I grants that the Department of Education can give to underfunded schools, but again, the funding that comes from your state and local government. Now, if you are in a red state that's poor, states like California and Massachusetts will bail you out, and the Department of Education will send you additional money. But as far as class sizes, curriculum, the funding that's allocated to each of your schools, each of the classes, the teachers, all of that is handled by your local school.
My point is that the government getting involved in all of these areas in our lives is never good. You know what doesn't have these problems in Tucson, Arizona? The charter schools. You know what doesn't have the problem in Tucson, Arizona? The private schools. As soon as we removed the government from these situations, everything starts to get improvement. And that is also another one of my points, is when you're saying, hey, Donald Trump is terrible. I don't think so. I don't think it's good to have 87,000 IRS agents. I don't think it's good to have all of this, programs to try to, I guess, improve people's lives from the federal government level, because they can't get it right. I don't need my money going there. I can decide, I can pay for my own kids' school, right? I pay for, and then if I can't, I can go to a charter school. There's Lehman Academy right where I'm at. They're wonderful. If I can't afford it, they're free. But every one of our public schools are broken. And I can see where people are saying, hey, not everybody can pay for private school. But again, if you look at bases here in Tucson, Arizona, they're a top 50. We just said, if you live in a red state that's broke, they can't figure it out. Well, look at Basis school system. It's called Basis here in Tucson, Arizona. It's on River and Oracle. They're a top 50 school in the United States. Guess what it is? A charter school. Guess how much it costs to go there? $0.
And how many students are able to get into that school?
I would say, so probably
we have charter school. I'm a substitute teacher too. I moonlight as a substitute teacher. Every charter school that we have has a waiting list of hundreds of kids. Most of them don't get in.
Right, but now look at the charter schools that get it right expand. Like look at Basis here. That one place did really well. Now you have, I don't know what it is, probably 5 to 6 Basis schools here. Lehman Academy is another one here in Tucson, Arizona. It started out with one school and now has 8 or 9. But if you start to just allow that to develop and grow, we don't need the public school systems. We need competitiveness. We need schools to be able to get rewarded based off of performance and what they're actually contributing to our children's lives.
Tim, if they're not paying tuition, where's the funding coming from?
I don't know where the funding is coming from all the charter schools.
They're still public schools. They're just differently targeted. A lot of charter schools are targeted.
Where are they getting the money?
State and federal money.
So you're telling me that non-accredited schools are getting paid from the federal government?
No,
those are non-accredited schools. Every one of them I just named is a non-accredited school.
What do you mean accredited?
So when I went there, I had to sign a thing that it's not accredited. So it's not. They didn't get the same grants and the same funding, the same resources from being credited from the state, and I don't know if it's on a federal level, but on the state level. So
that usually has to do with like the teachers. You're signing something that's saying the teachers may not be licensed state teachers, because a lot of times those schools are targeted to certain skill sets. Like you'll have one that's targeted towards like computer education, so they might have teachers who are computer science degree holders, but they're not licensed teachers in the state. That's typically what those waivers are for.
Sure, I can understand that. Well, guys, I've had a good conversation with you guys. I appreciate the conversations and the dialogue. And Harry, thank you for allowing me to come on and talk to you. I think you've been respectful. I don't think a lot of the people in the chat have been very respectful. And again, I would go to my original claim is that I think name calling, making fun of, and doing those things just further divides us. And my only advice to you, Harry, and maybe you could pass this on to Dean and Parker, is focus less on dunking on people and having more open-ended dialogue where somebody can say something and have a response back without saying, where you're looking for the I got you, I dunked on you.
I don't think that's how we conduct the conversations here, but I understand the sentiment. I think I don't think that's how Parker or Dean conduct their conversations either, but that's just me.
Sure, I understand it. And I don't know who the gentleman is that you brought on there.
Well, it's Law of the Wild, everybody. And by the way, everybody, you should follow Law of the Wild. He's fantastic. Public defender in Minnesota. He's at 37,500 followers right now. I think we can get like 500 people to follow him to get him to 38,000. So, or at least, we'll get close. So if you're in the chat and you haven't followed Law of the Wild yet, please do so. Anyway, sorry. It was a good segue.
And sir, I always, I appreciate you coming on and having a cordial conversation with me, Law of the Wild. And I'm sure I'll follow him, Harry. Okay.
Yeah, you should. You should.
I don't follow a lot of people. I think you can click on there, but I'll follow
well, you
him.
follow me in law.
I feel special. Thanks,
I'll follow you too, Harry. I don't think
Thanks,
I follow
man.
you, but I do see a lot of your content. It does pop up there, and I don't mind having opposing views around me. Like that doesn't offend me. And it doesn't bother me to do that. And I appreciate both of your guys' time, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night. I lost my fantasy football. Jamar Chase let T. Higgins get a little bit too many catches there for me because the other guy had T. Higgins, and we fight for another day, right?
Fight for another day. I like that. All right, Tim. Thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for the conversation.
You guys have a blessed night.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right, Law of the Wild. Sorry, I mentioned this the last conversation. It went on longer than expected.
I get you. Yeah. It was good. I hope, again, like I'm under no illusions that I'm changing the guests' minds, but my goal is always to give people here in the audience some tools and some information that maybe they can use in their own lives or any other people who they encounter in their day-to-day lives. So.
I always think that these lives are more so to convince the audience than the people you're talking to. You know what I mean? So
I mean, you know better than anybody. Sometimes you're talking to a brick wall, but but it's about equipping the people who want to learn and want to get information more so than I kind of liken it like, if I'm in trial, my goal is to convince the prosecutor they're wrong. My goal is to convince the jury that the prosecutor's wrong. So
that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. You have a good night, sir.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. As always, have a good one.
You too.
Guys, also, Law of the Wild's going to be in the chat. Maybe we can get his username pinned for a little bit because he's up to, I think it was 37.8. He only needs 200 more followers until 38,000. So if he comments in the live, there he is. Let's get him pinned because I think we can do it. I believe in you folks. Go give Law of the Wild a follow. As I mentioned, he's quite literally less than 200 followers away from 38,000. So you might as well give Law of the Wild a follow. We'll get him close as we can. 200 followers away from 38,000. So you might as well give Law of the Wild a follow. We'll get him close as we can if we don't hit the total. So definitely give him a follow. He's a public defender in Minnesota, and public defenders are folks who don't get paid enough to do what they do. So whatever way we can help, right? Let's check him now. 37.9. Guys, he's at 37.9. If we can't get close to a 38 or even 38, what are we doing? So give Law of the Wild a follow. He's super close to 38. There he is. There he's 38, ladies and gents. There it is. Good job, everybody. Clap it, everybody. I appreciate you all for doing that. That's awesome. He's as you see, very smart guy. So, it's always good. I have some messages to read and then we're going to head out, but I want to make sure I'm addressing everybody. Ami, thank you for the $3 supporting JFK. Is like Jake Dapper said, hope you like measles, America. Or yeah, you meant RFK Jr. You see in the comments. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Alexa, thanks for the $1.23. You don't have to read aloud on live. Well, thank you, Alexa. I appreciate that very kind message. And thank you for being here always. It really means a lot. Devon, thanks for the $1. Trump spews hatred and racism every day. Biden used the word garbage and Kamala says weird and MAG has a meltdown. The hypocrisy is nauseating. Yeah, I mean, that's always a really strange talking point to me that I hear from Republicans. I go, Biden said X, Y, and Z. First of all, he didn't. But second of all, have they heard their own guy speak? Jessica, thanks for the $5. Tell MAGA Tim to not say we, like he's speaking for all of Arizona. Voter here in Arizona, and the blue hearts, meaning you voted for Kamala Harris. I know. I can feel that. God, I hear you. Katie, thanks for the $3. My eye is twitching from listening to terrible Timmy, but still, but still BDE dog walking him. I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Katie. Trista, thanks for the $10. Scoring a date with you feel like winning the NFL, just like a perfectly timed tackle. Meeting you is right on point. So smooth. I just snuck in there, just like you debate. God, bang, 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 bang. Bang, 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 Trista, one after another. You're lethal, you might say. Prolific, you might be described as. I appreciate you. Amanda, thanks for the $1. My ex and I broke up about 2 years ago, and I'm still not able to move on. I feel like I need to stop holding on to the past and move on. But a part of me also feels like I maybe should try one last time because of how perfect our connection was. Do you have any advice? Oh, man. I do, but I'll save it. One sec. Let me. I'll do what I did earlier. Aaron, thanks for the $5. Appreciate you. Aaron, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. You're very kind. I hope you know that. Mimi, thanks for the $5. I want to thank you for what you do. I grew up always being the only Dem in the room, so when I debate, I tend to get emotional/defensive. Having watched these past couple weeks, I feel so confident in my debating abilities. I wish I had like-minded people like you in my debate class. Well, Mimi, you always had it in you. You always had it in you. This is, nobody else is doing it for you. You're doing it. Give yourself some credit here. You know what I mean? Give yourself some credit here that you're the person making the change. You're the one talking to your friends, family, and loved ones, convincing them, and you're putting in the work. And we, with everybody in the chat and across the country, we appreciate you for doing that. So thank you, Mimi. And Katie, thanks for the $1. Thank you, Harry. I appreciate you. Katie, that means a lot. I appreciate you being here. Jenna, thanks for the $2. How did your NFL fantasy go? Have to see how the game goes tomorrow. So Cameron, thanks for the $1. I'm not from Tennessee, but you're the only 10 I see. I just wasn't expecting it. I appreciate you, Cameron. Madison, thanks for the $2. Thanks for all that you do. Madison, as I say to everybody, thank you for what you do. I know you're working hard in your personal life, so I appreciate that. Garrett, thanks for the $5. Keep on keeping on, man. Love your lives. Thank you, Garrett. I appreciate you. And to Amanda, what advice do I have? I don't know if I have any. I'm not. This is not a department of which I feel I'm especially skilled. Or I gotta provide ample or good advice. I don't know if I actually don't know if I have any advice for you. I might not have any advice. It's just tough. I think that, like, I don't. People in the chat are saying move on. I understand, but moving on can be tough. So it's not easy to just like move on. But I think you have to I don't know what your situation is, but you have to find closure in. Like, you have to find closure in not having closure almost, you know what I'm saying? So like, if for example, your relationship just dropped like that and you haven't like spoken since, like, you're probably, you maybe want to talk to that person one more time, but that would give you closure, but like, you may never get that. So you have to almost like be comfortable with the lack of closure and giving you closure in a sense. But then again, I think it's like after 2 years, moving on is, I think the advised thing. But I understand it can be tough. And I don't know your circumstances. This is why I don't have any advice, because like it depends on what your circumstances are. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I don't know. Don't listen to me. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about in this instance. Ladies, gents, boys, and girls, we're wrapping up the live. Make sure to drop a follow if you haven't already. I also post on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook. All of those links are in my bio. So if you want to add on Snapchat, you want to follow on Instagram, you want to follow on TikTok, whatever it might be, go check it out. Go check it out. All those links are in my bio. Yeah, guys, have a great rest of your night. Have a great Monday tomorrow. It's the beginning of the week. Keep it up. Have a great day tomorrow, whether you're in school or work or whatever it is. Enjoy yourself. Have a good one. All right. And we're going to do some raids here. So Pickles GG is live. Isaiah R. Martin, I believe is live. Thank you, Joseph, for the $5 for defending democracy. I appreciate you, Joseph. Means a lot, man. Thanks for being here. Isaiah R. Martin is live. Pickle GG is live. Go show him some love and all of that good stuff. Let them know we care about them. Let them know we appreciate them. And shout out Virginia for the $3, Devon for the $1, Allison for the $1, and yeah, that's it. I just want to make sure I get everybody. So I appreciate you all. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. We will talk soon. All right.